I almost picked up a brown snake because I thought it was a stick while I was tidying my yard. And when something like that happens, you spend the rest of the day thinking every stick is a snake. So I had to get rid of my leaf, stick, and palm frond pile that had been building up over the autumn and the winter, because in my mind, it was a literal pile of snakes. And I was kinda right, because when I burnt that leaf pile, I upset an entire family of eastern brown snakes. They didn't like being displaced. Then when my wife came out the house about a half an hour later, the snake had come to our front door because they had nowhere else to go. So I had to use an axe to kill it. It took me about 8 goes to get it. I didn't realize how fast a baby brown snake could move. And the entire time I was chopping at it, even though the axe handle is long, I felt like I was way too close to the snake. I was so scared while I was doing it that I got a headache afterwards. When I went back to work and told the story to my boss, she said it was understandable that I'd get a headache from being scared of a snake. But one thing really bothers me. What if she was just saying that and she thinks I'm actually a giant chicken for being scared of a snake? And also that I'm clumsy and stupid because it took me 8 goes to hit it. I have literally no way of knowing. And that's another thing. Why do we call being scared being chicken? They're actually the bravest animals out there. Do you know how I know? Because when I dropped one of the snakes off my knife when I was filming it so I could show people what actually happened, one of the chickens just grabbed a piece of that still alive snake and ran away with it. It was even still wriggling. That chicken ate half a snake, which included the pointy fangs and the venomous bits, in one go. It was like fruit by the foot. And now it's been 3 days and that chicken's still alive, and it's probably eating a whole bunch of other dumb stuff too. Why do we say that chickens are scared? They just do what they want. They don't think about anything. I thought I'd built my life in a way that I'd no longer be exposed to feeling primal fears. But the way that snake made me feel reminded me of watching the movie Fall. Anyway, now my axe is dull from all the times I missed the snake before I hit it, from hitting into the dirt and the gravel. So now I need to sharpen it on my Ken Onion Worksharp blade grinder attachment, which is the new model. So this is the new Worksharp core unit, standard grinding attachment, and Ken Onion blade grinder attachment. And this is the old Worksharp standard unit, basic attachment, and Ken Onion blade grinding attachment. Actually, the whole implement is called the Ken Onion Worksharp because the basic Worksharp is the much smaller one that's, still pretty capable, but not as tunable and honeable as these guys are. Let's look at all the components side by side, going from the basic unit, because there's been changes to everything. Alrighty, so this is the basic motor, the powerhouse of the sharpening system. This is where the energy comes from. This little engine here turns this, and that's what turns whatever belt system you've got. The main changes, as you can probably see, are the buttons along the top here. Kind of replace what used to be a winding wheel underneath to change the speed of the belt. So you'd wind it all the way down. So this way for slower and this way for faster. And you'd sort of push this switch in while you were depressing this, and that would lock everything on. These have been moved to like a touch button system here. They've got some slight little bit of push and click to them. But this is how you'll start the Worksharp. You'll pull the trigger and then you'll pop the top button there, and that'll make it stay on. See, it's got like a little Ouroboros symbol there, a bit like a snake eating its own tail perhaps. And then this is the stop button here, nice visible high vis stop button, and then up and down the plus and minus to change your speed. Much easier than fiddling around underneath and with side switches and whatnot. This is still a great system, and if you just ordered this like a month before this came out and was announced, don't feel dumb, because you've still got an amazing system that will do everything you need. But this one has a lot of good refinements, and that is probably pretty much the main one. There are some other nuances to how the motor and engine works, I'm sure. I think it's a little bit more powerful as well, but those high power settings are probably only going to be used for really big, rough grinding tasks. Most knives, you're going to be using the lower two settings, and right near the lowest turn setting of the old one as well. Looking at the cassettes, not a huge amount has changed here. There is the brake sort of, or the detachment system is still this little lever here. That's kind of how you click it on and off the motor unit. The main thing you got swapped over here is they've swapped the side angle guide for a top angle wheel. That is what you use to sort of click open. And as you turn this, the arms open and close So then when you rest, because when you sharpen, you rest it against that. So when you sharpen, rest against that, it'll, the further it is open, the wider the angle is, and the narrower the is, like so the lower the number. So you bring this down to like 15 or something. And then you get a really low angle. So 15 degrees is like kitchen knife thickness there. The little jaws on the new one are also somewhat padded. So I'll open these ones up. That felty material stops any perceived, scratching to perhaps some more fragile coatings and whatnot. It's all just plastic, so it's not going to really damage any steel really. But this old one here, it's just plastic. So there's some feltiness there to make a smooth pull through. So, you might be a little bit less worried about your more, painted finishes and whatnot. So basically, you just insert your cartridge here into this part here and click it up, and the little plastic bits fall into the tracking area there, and then you've got there you go, the system is ready to be used. So then you feed your belt into the work sharp. There's just a little lever there that you pull up, and then you can release that with the red line there. There's a little red button there. Once it's locked and set, and now the belt is taut and will turn when the engine starts. Yeah, so just for clarity, the old one just went up and down, like you had to hold it with your hand while you put the sharpening tape on, whereas now it just clicks up and then you push the red button, clicks down, tape is locked. Very cool. Cool, so it's not as much the focus of this video, but the cassette style sharpener is really, really good for sharpening kitchen knives, like longer style knives, anything over 4 to 5 inches in my opinion, especially if it's got a bit of free space around like the heel of the blade, so you can really get full contact between the tool guide, which is the little black wheelie thing there that you can rest upon. It's like a little plastic wheel that you roll back on just to keep everything level. It can be in touch with that, as well as the sanding belt, as well as the angle finding sort of plastic side there. So when the knife is a bit smaller, it's sometimes hard to cover all three. So definitely this is best for kitchen knives. Really good way of quickly sharpening a kitchen knife to a really, really keen edge for sure. Knives like, say, this Spyderco Sage here, it's got that little choil portion there, which sort of doesn't have the benefit of the free space like the edge of the kitchen knife does. And the choil sort of needs a two-stage bump across the tool guide there. So it sort of runs into it, and then you need to sort of hoik up the knife like so. So you're there, and up it goes. Not the end of the world, but not as easy as just a nice, simple kitchen knife. So for these sorts of knives, the blade grinder is really much better. You can really get right up to the edge, right hugging up, see, right where the blade begins. You can sort of cozy it right up there and do the full length of the blade really, really easily. So the blade grinder is actually better. Even though it's a bigger, more rugged sort of tool, it's actually better for the smaller knives than the pull-through cassette. Pull-through cassette, in my opinion, is really, really good as a kitchen knife sharpener, large blade machete sort of sharpener. But if you need that bit of extra control, I think the blade grinder is probably ideal. As for the blade grinding attachment, it's been beefed up massively on the new one. The old one certainly was no slouch, and it had a few little ambiguities that they've really helped iron out. So the main thing is the ease of locking on the belt. So they've just got this sort of really quite pronounced lever on the side here of this one. So you just pull this forwards like so, and down like that. Really kind of sticks out there for you. Whereas on the old one, you'd have to sort of pull this in and then out like that, and the belt would track onto the end of that. So just a different way of doing it. I'm not sure if it's better or worse. Just feels definitely different for sure. The angle system here is much, much easier to use. So now you've got an angle winder at the back there, which then changes the angle there, which changes the angle, whoops, changes the angle of the second wheel there, like so. And the wheel can also skip up and skip down a notch pretty easily too, whereas on the old one you have to unscrew it and move it up and down. A little bit less intuitive there. You can move it just to one other place rather than 3 possible positions on this one here. Oh yeah, I should say the reason you'd want to do that is to slacken or unslacken the belt, making it less or more micro-convex. So the closer you get, the tighter the belt is, so it's more like a standard V. Never going to be a full V, but more like it. So using the slackest one, you might be using for like a big chopping tool or something like that, like an axe maybe. If you were sharpening an axe with this, yeah, you could use it for an axe. Or just like a big heavy knife. The medium you could use for like a K-bar or like a relatively stout outdoor knife, that sort of thing. And then maybe the lighter one you'd use for your pocket knives and your whatever else. After the closest you can get to a V-style edge that this machine can afford you. So yeah, the angle system and the tracking is much easier to do. It's got a tracking wheel there, which just sort of steers the belt on the system. And once you're going, it looks really easy to see if it's tracking correctly. Overall, just way more heavily built. It's got a proper sprung little steel bit there for doing flat edges too, whereas on the old one, it was just sort of like, whoops. On the old one, it was just the flat surface of the machine for doing your flat grinds. Because this sort of pushes out a little bit and it's got a little bit of flex to it, you can really get your whatever you're flattening in sort of really well. So I did the spine of my K-bar BK9. I'd never had a flat spine on that, so I did that on this and it did really well. Overall, massively beefed up with some quality of life improvements galore. Really do recommend if you are hanging out. I'd suggest, yeah, the new one has some real sort of extra ease of use to it that you'd find tangibly of benefit, I think, rather than just sort of stuff to change for the sake of changing. So very cool. Anyway, to attach, take out your little tightening lug. That's just held in this hole. It's not just pulls out. It's just a place to keep it. Because what you're going to do is you're going to place your work sharp into, or you're going to put the tightening knob into this end of the axle there. So turns the other way, like it's counterweight. And then we're going to pop this on, and this just finds its spot and then sits down flat on the table like that. It doesn't sort of lock in. It's pretty, it can move around, but by virtue of both things being pretty heavy and just plopping down on a flat surface, there you have your grinding setup, and we'll be ready to go with the addition of a sharpening belt. A number of sharpening belts come with the system, from pretty coarse to very smooth and fine. So with this axe, it's pretty dull. It's got some, proper stone chips taken out of the edge there. There's not a great deal going on that's going to be cutting positively right now. So we're going to start on the coarse belt, I reckon. Coarse, yeah. We're going to start on the grey coarse belt, and that should enable us to do some good sort of basic stock removal and thin that belt down, that blade down just a little bit. So we've got this pulled out and locked down. That will free up space for us to get our belt started on it. And it goes around and up across these two rolls here. There we go. You get the hang of it. And then this one pops up and there's tension on the belt. Just from an immediate outset, I prefer the previous belt fixing setting over this. I feel like the leverage is a little bit too high on the edge. Just a little bit less. You can sort of see I'm struggling with a little bit. And I will get the hang of it, and it might just need a drop of oil or something too, but definitely prefer, or I found it easier with the other system. It's cool looking. I see what they're trying to do, but my initial muscle memory perhaps isn't here yet, or just not having as much luck. Just because it's a longer lever, you find it sort of twists it towards rather than pulls it straight back. It's a little minutiae to it, but just thought I'd let you know. It is just something I noticed. Yep. sheet oil, pretty much 90% better now. There is still like a leverage factor where just by virtue of the lever being so far away, like putting pressure like right on the end of that sort of is hard to transfer down that sort of cylinder that it needs to push down on. But yeah, overall, just applying oil probably every couple of weeks or something will probably make it a lot easier going. And I suppose being out there, out and proud like it is sort of hanging out, it is sort of quicker to access. So I don't know, I still think the last one was easier, but then they've had to sort of cover in a lot of the internals to allow for some of the extra features like the angle, angle guide being wound at the back and stuff. So I guess it's sort of a necessary thing. And also I suppose it is better to have everything more enclosed and not sort of just able to get stuff stuck in it, I suppose. So I don't know, I'm not smart enough to make something like this, but those are just my thoughts on that little part of it anyway. So just showing you how the tracking here works, that little winding knob there, you adjust that, it just moves the belt from side to side slightly, the tracking just goes on and off. Sometimes you just need to realign things, it's just the nature of complex-ish machinery, I guess, and that's the up and down. I'm going to leave it pretty slow for most of my sharpening. That's not for any reason apart from I want to minimize excessive stock removal and just have a bit more control. You can speed these guys up, no problems at all. But I always start, just because I don't want to misshape my tools. This axe has a lot of meat behind the edge there, so it's not a hugely dangerous thing, but if you're going to use it on knives, thinner blades, then yeah, absolutely, just go slow, take your time. Another frequent thing you get in the comments, often querying or even confidently stating, is that these things will make the steel lose its temper. I assure you that won't happen, especially not in these settings that I'm doing it on here. And just remember, most factories are sharpening their edges using very similar systems and then putting them straight in the box. At the most, in my testing, when I got a lesser axe and I put it right up against it and I held it for way longer than I would, and I had it on the rougher belt and on the highest setting, it got to a temperature like just under 50 degrees Celsius, which is like in Australia kind of like leaving it out in the sun. So if you've got a tool where your steel's going to lose its temper from being left out in the sun, then yeah, you might have some other problems that aren't caused by this. And I know like right at the absolute, stock removal point, the temperature is probably a little bit higher again, but yeah, it's just not an issue. It doesn't glow red hot or anything like that. It's one of those things that kind of people say with confidence, a bit like that Dunning-Kruger effect, where you're a bit right, but you say it so confidently that largely the wrong part shines through. So yeah, you're not really going to lose your temper of your blades. The biggest risk you have with things like this is over stock removal, removing too much stock. All right, let's just absolutely blitz this crappy Gerber fixed blade against the flat side, so maximum friction, and see how, like the fastest speed, what it does. So yeah, like the way you can I guess ruin your knife if you put it on the maximum speed and press it against the plate there. That's like, there's nowhere for the heat to go, real friction between there. So you'll start to get, if you do that, you could get some ambering of your blade. So, really thin steel behind, like right at the edge could, I suppose, be like damaged by that to the point where the heat treatment might fail. So I guess don't do that.
Oh no. Anyway, last week.
Looking very shiny and polished there. Still like a bit of burr going back and forward, but I'm going to use a strop at the end with some compound just to make sure I get all that off. But this last step on the blade grinder is their stropping belt, which is a very, very smooth belt indeed. Feels a lot different, very sort of fabric-y feeling rather than sandpapery feeling. So it has a very sort of low abrasion content, I'm sure. Just really is a finishing belt. Probably doing a bit of deburring and polishing more than anything. Definitely wouldn't be removing too much stock at this stage with this belt. Tangled up. There we go. That feels like a brand new Grand Fizbrax axe, and if you've had one of these new, you know what that feels like. Very, very sharp indeed. But I am going to quickly finish with a leather paddle strop and some Creeley compound. You would never really need an axe to be this sharp, but it's fun to fuss over them, especially when you've got these wanky, expensive ones that are, you know, all about the aesthetic. You may as well make it all about the performance as well, because they certainly do have a high performance potential for an axe, but we do get a bit, you know, a bit sort of up our own asses with this sort of stuff as well, because you've got to remember, this is still basically just like 1065 carbon steel. It's not some super amazing stuff from, you know, Field of Dreams or something, you know, wasn't struck by lightning and thrown down from a mountain. Alrighty, sharpness test. Not bad for an axe. Which is definitely not a precision tool. Well, not compared to a knife anyway. So very, very sharp bit there. It's gonna bite like crazy for the first, you know, few limbs at the very least. Nice polish on it, looking pretty darn good. I also sharpened yesterday just the BK9 in full, as well as doing the spine, which I showed you before. Yeah, this is a great tool for bringing larger blades to it. Blades that you're not as fussed about the micro management of the angles and stuff. You know, you can be pretty accurate with, you can have either slim angles or thick angles, whatever, but because you're still bringing your wrists and your hands to the piece, it's got that somewhat freehand effect, but get great results with this. Anything big that you find too clumsy to bring to a stone, this will be able to get an amazing edge on it for sure. So stay tuned for more videos on this. This is me just very much feeling it out. But yeah, overall, I know the Ken Onion previous system and the new changes implemented on this one, aside maybe from that little lever, which I'm still getting used to, it's a real nice improvement, that's for sure. So stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.
You're gonna lose all your neck feathers doing that, you dickhead.